Greetings to everyone around the world, and a warm welcome to another edition of Veritas at veritasradio.com. I'm your host, Mel Fabregas, and I sincerely thank you for joining me once again, and I wish you and all your loved ones a Happy New Year. And if this is your first time, please make yourself at home. To listen to all our shows, just go to veritasradio.com and subscribe. You'll have access to 5 seasons worth of material. Start the year right. And speaking of starting the year right, you should always start with your health, with your good health. Have you considered a Sanitas subscription? Take a look at all the shows that have aired so far and all the ones that are coming. You cannot put a price on health. Go to sanitasradio.com for more information. And for MMS, alkaline and ionized water systems, our new futuristic metal-cased USB drives with all our seasons and more. Just visit the Veritas store. And to get in touch with us for member support, media inquiries, you want to be a guest or are a whistleblower, there's a link for you by clicking on the contact button of our website at veritasradio.com. Nearly 25,000 years ago, some highly intelligent species built a structure that emits unearthly levels of energy and negative ions like none found in nature. Who did it and why? That's the rest of the story yet to be discovered. Almost everything they teach us about the ancient history is wrong. The origin of man, civilization, and pyramids. History books will have to be rewritten. And to help us rewrite some of our history and more, directly from Bosnia-Herzegovina, tonight's special guest is Dr. Semir Osmanagich. Hello, Dr. Osmanagich, and welcome to Veritas. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Great. And it's such an important interview tonight, folks, because I've been following your work for the past few months. Some people have introduced me to you. My friend Regina Meredith highly recommended you. And you're still part of academia. And I'm always fascinated with open-minded, brave professors who defy the established authority and conventional science in order to explore and answer questions that we haven't been able to answer. Can you tell us how your journey started? When did you start realizing that what you were taught in school and you were probably teaching was not really correct?
Well, for the last 25 years, I've been researching pyramids all over the planet and the ancient history. My PhD, being about the Mayan studies, took me to Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Belize, Mexico. Later on, I would travel to China or Bolivia, Egypt, Sudan, European countries, and then I realized that what they've been telling us about the ancient past is mostly wrong, especially in the case of the pyramids. They teach us that they are built only in Egypt and Mexico, and that's so wrong. There are 250 pyramids in the central Chinese province of Shanxi, 300 pyramids in Peru, 200 pyramids there in Cahokia National Park in the state of Illinois, tens of thousands of them in Mesoamerica. There are tens of pyramids on Canary Islands in the Atlantic Ocean, and 7 of them at the island of the Mauritius, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, also in Australia, Sudan, southern France, ancient Greek soil. The world of the past was simply the world of the pyramids. And then secondly, they teach us that they were built as tombs for pharaohs. Well, in the biggest, oldest, and the most superior pyramids, no mummies, no signs of pharaonic civilization. And then I realized that we have to rewrite the history.
People have questions all the time, and it seems that at some point in the past, our teachers are just teaching us that history started 8,000 years ago at the most. Why are we not taught about what happened before 8,000 years?
Well, it seems that the history is not written based on historical facts, but to certain purposes run by elites. And you are right. They are telling us that everything started when it comes to the developed human societies in Sumer and Babylon 7,000-8,000 years ago, and then Akkad, Assyria, ancient Egypt, ancient India. Their story is that 10,000 plus years ago we were primitive cavemen, and after this progress in 21st century we are the most intelligent, the most developed, and the most beautiful. And that's wrong. This is only the last civilizational cycle. Before this one, there was another one, which was interrupted by huge global catastrophe over 12,000 years ago. Of course, we know it as the Big Flood. And before this one, there was another one, which was interrupted 18,500 years ago, and another one 55,000 years ago, and another one 75,000 years ago. We simply live in the fifth civilizational cycle. And there are a lot of physical evidence around us, from Yonaguni monuments on the bottom of the Pacific floor, from Baalbek, megalithic blocks, some of them over 1,200 tons in weight, and of course a new dating of Egyptian, Mexican, Peruvian, and Chinese pyramids will take us before the end of the last ice age. And now, to this list, we are adding another archaeological site, the Bosnian pyramids in the heart of the Europe.
In the past, it was accepted to say the world is flat. That has been proven wrong. Man cannot fly. That has been proven wrong. And the pyramids were built by primitive people. Has that been, or will it be, proven wrong?
Of course. Namely, when you see the Giza pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, or Khufu Pyramid, Khafre Pyramid, Mycerian Pyramid, this is something that we cannot repeat today with our technology. You go to the National Museum in Cairo, Egypt, and the curators will try to convince you that primitive copper soft tools and wooden sticks from ancient pharaonic times were the only tools needed to build the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So, the reality is something else. They were built by more advanced civilization who could maneuver with huge quantities of materials. But not only that. One day, when Egyptian archaeological sites open to interdisciplinary scientific views, to experts for energy phenomena, people will realize that the biggest and most famous Egyptian pyramids were used as huge energy machines. So now we have builders who knew to manipulate with the planetary energies. The same thing goes for the oldest Chinese pyramids, and over there we have 20 big, superior, old, and 200 smaller, inferior, and more recent pyramids. Similar thing is in Peru or Mexico, and now in Bosnia. The pyramids are not only the constructions, but very complex energy machines. So a lot to learn from the ancient past.
I can understand why, for example, the Egyptians, the Egyptologists, they don't want to jeopardize their national patrimony by admitting that Egyptians did not build the pyramids. And, you know, when you have 95% of the Egyptologists being Muslim, if you get outside of that, then the belief is crumbled. But let's start with something interesting here. At some point in the past, you were with a group of people studying the Akashic record. Instead of asking questions about yourself, you asked about pyramids. Who built them? Why and when? Did you get your answers?
Akashic records is a very interesting phenomenon. From the day one in our Bosnian pyramid projects and my search for the ancient builders, I realized that this physical aspect is not the only one that we can get our answers from. We needed the information from the other two. One is energy realm, and the third one is spiritual realm. When it comes to spiritual dimension, Akashic records is an idea which has been around for not hundreds, but thousands of years. The idea is that in the spiritual realm, there is a library which contains all the records, all the information about our past, present, and future. And people who can tap to this vast knowledge are called Akashic record readers. What I realized in modern science is that our future is to combine the physical and spiritual science. The problem with the scientists in our material world is when they come to the wall, they don't know what to do next. No creativity. The problem with the spiritual science is it is not a science yet, no scientific methodology. So we need to combine the two. So I made the experiment with 6 Akashic record readers 3 years ago. And then I was showing them the presentation of approximately 30 different archaeological sites in the world, from Peruvian Machu Picchu, pyramids in Mexico, Egypt, China, Mauritius, Yonaguni monuments, Bosnian pyramids, asking them questions about their builders and the time when they were built. Well, what you would expect is if those people have the access to the library and if they are getting some type of encyclopedia, they would be getting 6 identical answers. It did not happen. Namely, they were getting some different answers, especially when it came to the age and the origin of the pyramids. However, when it came to the question of builders, they had the common ground. They were saying that the builders were not of this planet. But when I would ask them details, where were they from, they were giving me, again, different answers from different star systems. So at this point, I would say that using Akashic records is very important. Hint, it can help us getting some information, but I would not rely totally on Akashic records.
Of course, because you have more of a scientific background. I can understand that. And I wonder why others like you, you're a professor, but you seem to have exhausted many of the current accepted scientific avenues. Is this why you're exploring beyond the norm, behind the veil?
We have to do that because when you come, again, like I said, to the wall, you don't know what to do next. What are the answers? You need to use hints, either from different scientific disciplines or from spiritual realm, or from the people who can feel things, and they can give you rather interesting information. For example, when we are discussing the Peruvian Machu Picchu, which is a famous site in eastern Peru between the Andes and Amazon, I would be asking them about the time when the Machu Picchu was built. And 6 Akashic record readers were giving me 4 different periods of time. But then, when I went there, I knew that everybody in science were talking the same thing about the Machu Picchu being a royal retreat for Incas 800 years ago. When I went there, I knew that they were wrong, because I could see at least 4 distinctive civilizations. And then I was remembering, while listening to the Akashic record readers, they were talking about different periods. So in reality, you need actually to get all the information in order to form a big picture. And that's the reason why the information from the spiritual realm are important for us scientists.
Now, the question many people have is, why is it that we don't go back beyond 8,000 years? And then we'll get into the Bosnian pyramid. But I'm still curious as to why there we say the elite is keeping a veil over the real history. Why is that?
Now, if they show that our civilization is very young, it means we are like a baby. So if you're a baby, it means you're making your first steps. You need someone who can help you, who can control you. And it's always about the control. And that's the reason why you have elite, and then you have a public, a majority. That's not my idea of the world tomorrow. We have to have same access to information, to knowledge. If you have that, no need for elites.
Exactly. Well said. So take us back to April 2005. How did you discover the Bosnian pyramid? And you say it's the first pyramid in Europe.
Before April 2005, I spent 25 years investigating pyramids all over the planet. And then I realized that the pyramids are not only about the supposedly tombs, but they were about the shape, perfect orientation, energy properties. I came to the central Bosnian town of Visoko, 20 miles northwest from the capital city of Sarajevo, not because of pyramids, but to visit the local museum. However, when I came there, I saw this hill towering the town. I could see 4 sides, triangular faces, obvious corners. Even though that hill was covered in soil and vegetation, I could clearly see that the slope was the same from the bottom to the top. So the geometry of the pyramid was there. I took a compass, and compass showed me that the sides of the pyramid perfectly match the cardinal points, east, west, north, and south. And I knew that Mother Nature is not capable of making hills with 4 sides, triangular faces, corners, same slope, and perfect orientation. I knew that based on my experience with Chinese pyramids or those in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, that this was an artificial structure, but after thousands of years, covered by dirt, soil, vegetation. Then I was with a group of people, among them director of local museum, and I asked them to go to the top of this hill, as they called it. We went on the top, and they were discussing the Middle Age, because during the Middle Age, on the top of the pyramid, there was a fortress. So while they were discussing that, I was checking the surrounding area, looking for another regularly shaped hill. And just across the valley, yes, there it was. Another one, I could see nicely 3 triangular faces, plateau on the top, and then again, using compass, I noticed that those sides perfectly match cardinal points. And then I started seeing some pictures in my head. I could see that the whole valley at one time was completely paved, that people were going between those 2 pyramids. And when the pyramids come in pairs, they are usually called in Meso and South America pyramids of the sun and the moon. But I thought, well, I don't want to name 2 pyramids, just another pyramid of the sun and the moon. I said, well, let me add the Bosnian pyramid of the sun and the Bosnian pyramid of the moon, so everybody would know that we are talking about those particular pyramids. So I interrupted my company and I told them, gentlemen, do you know that we are standing on the top of the biggest pyramid on the planet, the Bosnian pyramid of the sun, and across the valley is the Bosnian pyramid of the moon? They stopped talking. They were listening to me. They knew that I was writing books about the pyramids and ancient civilizations, but now they heard the claim that we are on the top of the huge, artificially made pyramidal structure. And that was April of 2005.
I don't want to mention names of other researchers, but I've had researchers on this program. One of them went to Yonaguni, scuba dived, broad footage, incredible structures down there that to me, they're definitely not natural. Then I have another researcher whom I interviewed some time ago. I asked him about the Bosnian pyramid, and you probably know who he is. And I cannot believe that he said, and he's an open-minded researcher. I'm surprised that he's saying that is a natural formation. What do you say to people who say that?
Well, we are talking about the scientific arguments here. If you want to call something a pyramid, then obviously you need to have certain scientific criteria, not pharaonic tombs, but you have to have a geometry of the pyramid, which is clearly present here in a case of 5 structures, which I named the pyramids of the sun, moon, dragon, earth, and love. Secondly, Those triangular faces match the cardinal points. Number 3, we have inner passageways. Number 4, we have artificially made concrete material that covers the Bosnian pyramids. Number 5, we have underground tunnel network. Number 6, we have very important 2 major rivers above the ground and a lot of underground water streams. Water was always very important for ancient builders in Egypt, China, and Mexico. And number 7, we have elements of sacred geometry. 3 biggest pyramids in Bosnia, Sun, Moon, and Dragon, form perfect equilateral triangle when we connect their tops. The distance between tops, 2,170 meters, approximately 1.3 miles. So those 7 elements are the scientific criteria which have to be fulfilled to call something a pyramid. Now, we do have people who, from their cozy chairs in Sarajevo or Paris, London or Boston or New York, are saying, well, I believe in Bosnian pyramids, or I don't believe. It's possible or it is impossible. But these are their opinions. Opinions are irrelevant in science. Only archaeological digging, testing of samples, lab analysis, radiocarbon datings. That's what matters in science. And here we have a case of very solid evidences that we have artificial constructions in the heart of Bosnia. People that you mentioned, for example, Hancock, when he was diving over 300 times to the bottom of the Pacific floor, he could clearly see, and he made thousands of photos with his wife Santa. And you can see that there are artificial structures there, steps, 90 degrees, nicely shaped. And then you have a guy who comes once, who doesn't even know how to dive, who used 2 Japanese divers to get him out on the surface. And when he goes back, he's claiming, oh, I'm expert in Inaguni, there is nothing there, it's all natural. The same guy comes to our site, he's saying, it's all natural. There are hundreds of natural hills like that. When I ask him, okay, give me at least one, I never get the answer. So, if somebody claims that he is geologists, they take samples, they do analysis, and they give us results. That's what we need. What we had in our case, we had the shape of pyramid, we removed about 3-4 feet of soil, and then we are finding blocks. Some of them nicely rectangularly shaped blocks. We took samples, sent them to 6 different institutes for materials in Bosnia, Italy, and France. And they all confirmed the same thing. That was artificially made concrete. They even explained us technological process, how it was made. They explained us that the binder they used was melted clay. For example, the leading world expert in ancient concretes and cement, Professor Dr. Joseph Davidovich of France, the guy who established Institute for Geopolymers, analyzed it under electronic microscope, and he concluded, yes, there was an artificial binder, which he called geopolymer cement, which was also used during the ancient Roman times, but obviously in the case of Bosnian pyramids, much, much before. And this is what really matters in science: testing, analysis, dating.
And you did mention one of the researchers I spoke with, our good friend Graham Hancock and his wife Santa. But I'm looking here at the pictures that you sent me in Visoko in Bosnia. I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not a scientist. I just wonder what took so long for somebody. And I'm glad that you were the one who saw that this was actually a pyramid. What took so long? Because I see those pictures, and if I had been there as a tourist, I would have started questioning myself without the degrees.
The same question I get at every presentation I have, from Little Rock to Kuala Lumpur, from Oslo to Cairo. How come nobody noticed something so obvious?
Right.
You have a hill with 4 sides, triangular faces, perfect orientation. Well, I don't know why, but I know when I got there, and for the 25 years I was actually prepared for that moment. Every one of us has the mission in the life. And then I had to see, I guess, all the pyramids in the world before I saw the Bosnian pyramid, before I recognized it. And then I was thinking, well, I'm an independent scientist. I had the business in Houston. I'm the president of the manufacturing corporation, so financially I'm independent, and it makes me intellectually independent also. Of course, I do teach at the university. I got the Center for Archaeology. I write books and so on. But imagine if someone from mainstream science who 100% relied on income from, let's say, university, for example, assistant professor, goes to his professor and tells him, hey, I just discovered the biggest pyramid here, 20 miles northwest. Probably professor would tell him, hey, don't talk about it or you're going to get
right.
fired. And of course, people were afraid for their jobs. Of course, the second thing, those pyramids are in the heart of Bosnia. There are no archaeologists in Bosnia. There are no experts in pyramids in the whole of Balkan region. So, people would see this regular shape and they would probably make some comments and they will continue with their lives. But in my case, when I first went there, I said, no, this is so important. I cannot start doing some other things, but I have to stay on this one the rest of my life. So after April of 2005, I submitted the request for the permission to the government, the regional government, to get permission to start digging. I was doing some preliminary digging, geological core surveys, archaeological trenches, some analysis. I was paying for all that. And by October of 2005, I had enough material to write my first book about the discovery. At that time, what I could see with my naked eyes were two pyramids. I was writing about them, and also I said that we were going to discover prehistorical underground labyrinth. When you come with such huge ideas, of course that because of jealousy or lack of knowledge, you're going to get some resistance in the local area. So the first one to attack me were local historians, archaeologists, geologists. They were saying it's impossible. We did not have pharaohs. Therefore, we don't have pyramids. They did not realize the lack of their knowledge. The pharaohs did not build pyramids in Egypt or hundreds of thousands of slaves. The slaves did not build the oldest pyramids in China or in Mexico and so on. Well, when I announced the news, in a short period of time, I had received 12,000 emails of support from all over the world. And then I realized, hey, this is not a one-man show. This is the cultural heritage that belongs to the planet, to all of us. Then I established a non-profit foundation and named it Archaeological Park Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. And in the last 8 years, it has become the most active archaeological site in the world. And we are very proud of that fact.
When you say we didn't have pharaohs in Bosnia, I just think it's like saying unless Christopher Columbus came along, no one else discovered America. But that's another show. Now let's talk about the scientific evidence that you've accumulated so far. The carbon dating. Have you conducted carbon dating, and what was the result?
Of course, one of the most intriguing questions would be, how old are they? Well, in our case, we have 5 pyramidal structures completely covered by soil and vegetation. If we can figure out the age of the soil, we could get the minimum age of the structure. The scientific discipline that investigates the origin of soil is called pedology. In Bosnia, we have an institute for agropedology in Sarajevo, and their team came to our sites. They took samples from the Sun and the Moon pyramid. And Professor Rasulovic, who was running the study, he announced at our first scientific conference in 2008 the results of his study. He said that the soil was between 12 and 15,000 years old. It meant that the structure was much older. That was 2008. In 2012, during our summer camp and archaeological excavation, young Italian archaeologists Riccardo Brett and Nicola Visconti, with a group of volunteers, while removing the soil above the concrete blocks, they discovered a piece of organic material on the top of the concrete block. That was a fossilized leaf. So, obviously the structure was there, the wind was blowing, bringing this leaf on the surface of the concrete block. Very soon it was covered by dust and the soil and remained there. Well, this piece of organic material could give us again the minimum age of the structure. So we sent it for radiocarbon dating in Kiev, Ukraine, and we got results last year. The age of the leaf was 24,800 years, plus minus 200 years. Now, we go 25,000 years in past, and this is still a minimum age of the structure. And finally, this season, in July of 2013, under our archaeological manager, Tim Moon from New Zealand, we discovered a new piece of organic material. This time, it was between the first row of concrete blocks and the second row of blocks, like in the sandwich, another piece of fossilized leaf. Now, this leaf can give us a precise time of the construction. So we sent it to the radiocarbon lab. We got results in August of 2013, and the age was 29,200 years, plus minus 400 years. What does that mean? It means that we are pushing back the history of known advanced society for 20,000 years. So, logical conclusion, these are, at least at this time, the oldest pyramids on the planet.
You also mentioned Cahokia here in the United States. Why is it that some pyramids, like the Bosnian pyramid, are covered with foliage as opposed to, say, the pyramids in Egypt or Mexico?
Egyptian pyramids are in a desert. It's totally different climate. You can see them. But you go to China, to Shanxi province, which is the same climate belt like Bosnia, they're all covered by 2 to 4 feet of soil. You go to Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, in the jungles, 99% of the pyramids are still there. When we mentioned Cahokia pyramids, they are also covered by soil and the grass. Now, this is a very interesting case. They call them Cahokia mounds. When I was talking to the archaeologists there, I was telling them, well, in order to call something a mound, it has to be made from dirt. But what we have here, we have 4 types of construction materials. We have sandstone plates, pebbles, rocks, sand, and when they would complete those pyramids, they were cutting squares of grass and soil. They would place them upside down on the top of the pyramids. So, they are constructions. In order to build the biggest pyramid over there, which we call today the Monk's Mound, they needed an equivalent of 126,000 trucks with construction materials. That's 126,000 trucks, 20 tons capacity. And they had over 200 pyramids. So how many tens of millions of tons of construction material? Everything they teach us about those pyramids is wrong. Not only that they call them mounds, but they call this national park in the state of Illinois Cahokia. Well, Cahokia is the name for the minor Indian tribe from the 17th century that had nothing to do with those structures. Plus, the claim that those mounds were built by the Mississippians, Indian tribes, is also wrong. They never had on American soil the Indian tribe under that name? And, of course, the most logical question is, how is it possible that the tribal level is capable of moving tens of millions of tons of construction material? When I measured the orientation of the sites, I could notice that all four-sided pyramids over there match the cardinal points. They match the cosmic north. Now, the builders who knew about the cosmic north were not primitive tribes. They were advanced builders. All the pyramids except for one, the biggest one. And that one was matching the magnetic north. There is a difference between cosmic, which is more or less fixed, and magnetic, which moves every year between Canada and Siberia and back. So the builders who knew the difference between the two were not tribes. They were very advanced societies.
So I guess like the Cahokia or the Egyptians, they claimed that they were the ones, and that's what we hear the names attached to these structures. But then if you ask any of these tribes that's still along, I mean, ask an Egyptian, ask somebody from Cahokia, can they replicate the pyramids if they were the ones? And of course the answer is no. Why is it that after so many thousands of years, with the technology that we have now, 21st century, we can't even come close to doing it? Why is that, Dr. Sam?
We don't have tools. You see, when we, for example, do the transportation, what we need to do, we fight the gravitational force using our cranes. And that's the most primitive way to transport something. There are different ways to do the transportation of huge megalithic blocks. One of them, of course, is using the sound, or the frequency, or the power of your mind. So we have forgotten that knowledge, or we never had it. So obviously the builders had it, and they had a very simple and quick way to do it. They would probably made design in their heads, and using mental capabilities, they would build them in a very short period of time. Not tens of years, like our modern scientists claim. They were not, shaping those blocks in Aswan and then putting them on barges, wooden barges, and then, riding them to the river Nile. That was not the way to do it. There are some legends saying that those blocks are going through the air in Egypt or Mexico or in Tibet or in Peru. And probably they are right. So we need, on the conceptual level, to think about the other possibilities. And I would say those societies, they knew the power of sound. They knew the power of frequency. When we are building the simplest thing today in the manufacturing business, you need a drawing, 1, 5, 50 set of drawings. When you are building a house, you need 500 drawings. Imagine how many thousands of drawings you would need to build Egyptian pyramids. Not a single one was retrieved, because it was probably designed in their heads, and their mental capabilities were much in front of ours.
Well, let's take Tiwanaku. We'll come back to Bosnia, but let's take Tiwanaku as an example. Incredible archaeological sites there. What happened to the builders? This is a question that plagues most of us.
German-Bolivian mathematician and archaeologist Dr. Poznansky spent 50 years of his life investigating this particular site, 4,000 meters above the sea level, next to the lake Titicaca.
Right.
A Capena pyramidal complex was located there. Today we can only see a few granite blocks, but some of them, they perfectly fit each other. Now we know that granite is one of the hardest materials in nature. On Mohs scale from 1 to 10, granite is 6.5. Archaeologists claim that until 2,000 years ago, the only tools they had, they were copper tools. Well, copper on the same scale from 1 to 10 is only number 3, so it is inferior. You cannot use inferior tools to shape superior materials. Today, we would use diamond tools to shape them. Secondly, you can see some of the blocks, they have laser straight surface. Now, those blocks we could use today as the instruments in certain industries. And number three, some of the blocks were obviously machined. Now, the question is, who had 17,000 years ago diamond tools, lasers, and machines? And of course, since it does not fit in their view of Peruvian and the world history, the mainstream science does not accept Dr. Poznansky. They do not argue with him. They waited till the guy died, and now they try to forget all his work. But thankfully, we have independent researchers who go there, who ask questions, who are looking for some answers, and that is the only way to move forward. The science is not about accepting, with no discussion, the dogma they are giving us, but we need to doubt everything, plus everything I say during this interview. I hope you and the listeners will doubt.
And that's the way to do it. Absolutely, because that's what allows us to open more doors and find more information. But take the all of a suddens. Egypt, Mexico. We have these all of a sudden, these pyramids popping up everywhere. Why is it that we're told that civilizations were not connected when there are many, many common threads between the pyramids?
The biggest Egyptian pyramid, the Cheops or Khufu or Great Pyramid of Egypt, is 147 meters in height. Now, the length of the sides is 231 meters. Two sides, 462 meters divided by height of 147. The result is 3.14. That's the number pi.
Pi, right.
Now, when we go to Mexico, to Teotihuacan, the biggest pyramid there, the Pyramid of the Sun, is 74 meters high. So Egyptian one is exactly 2 times higher. Now, in the Mexican pyramids, the square root of number pi is incorporated. The length at the base, 231 meters. The base is square in Egypt and Mexico. There are 3 big pyramids in Mexico, in Teotihuacan, which we call the Sun, the Moon, the Quetzalcoatl. There are 3 big Giza pyramids, Cheops, Khafre, and Myceren. And their layout is exactly the same. They're telling us there was no communication between the continents thousands of years back. And here we can see the signature of the same architect. We go to Cambodia, we see a stepped pyramidal temple. We go back to Guatemala in Mesoamerica. We see the Temple of Black Jaguar in the Mayan city of Tikal. They are exactly the same. Like the same construction company did the work. They are telling us that only when white, superior man came from Europe and he sailed to Meso and North America, that the communication between the continents started 600 years ago. They are teaching us wrong. The communication was there, not thousands, but tens of thousands of years ago.
So what happened? Because as you say, you know, I laugh because I lived in Mexico for some time and I would go to these monuments, and you remember at the cathedral right next door, they were unearthing a city pretty much, and they have it all covered. They didn't want the media to be around, and what they did was destroy a lot of the pyramids and build churches on top of them. Why is that?
That was very unfortunate. We know about the genocide, but in this particular case, when the Spaniards were going to Meso and South America, that was a cultural genocide to destroy everything they did not know, everything that was more advanced that they had. For example, when it comes to Mayan books, they would burn tens of thousands of Mayan books. Unfortunately, only 5 books, which we call Mayan codexes, survived. But when you take only one of them, so-called Dresden Codex, which is kept in Germany, you can see that their knowledge about the astronomy was so vast. When it was partially deciphered 140 years ago, people did not know what the Mayans were talking about. They are talking about our solar system, movement within our galaxy, Milky Way, and they had the number 26,000. Well, only 120 years later, we realized that the Mayan knew that our solar system moved within our galaxy Milky Way, and it takes 25,920 years for one full circle. On some of the Mayan stelas, for example, in eastern Guatemala, Quirigua, we found 2 dates. One shows 4.6 billion years, and the other one 12.5 billion years. We have not deciphered the text, so we don't know which events they are describing. But I think astronomy can help us there. Astronomical knowledge is telling us that our planet is between 4 and 5 billion years old. Mayan had 4.6. Did they know the precise date? The second date of 12.5 billion years. Well, again, astronomy claims that our universe is between 12 and 15 billion years old. Again, did Mayan know exact date? We have so many similar information from Babylon, for example, on their clay tablets, and there are tens of thousands of them, majority of them in Berlin, in Germany. People like Zacharias Sitchin, they were deciphering them, and on some of them, the distances between our solar system and different stars in the star system Taurus were shown. For example, 82 light years, or 95 light years, or 104 light years. Now, this knowledge obviously was not very practical for the ancient Sumerians and Babylonians, but the knowledge was there. Of course, they had no way to get that knowledge with their primitive technology. That knowledge was brought there. Again, if we go back to the world of the pyramids, instead of slowly progress that Egyptologists try to teach us, we can see that the oldest pyramids are at the same time the biggest and the most superior. The pyramids in Egypt that they claim belong to the pharaoh Cheops or Khephren or Djoser or Sneferu and the others, they were built from limestone blocks and granite. Those that were built by the 12th or 18th dynasty rulers, they were built from the mud bricks, inferior materials. And by the way, this construction material is even used today. The same thing in China, 20 biggest pyramids, and the Chinese authorities do not give permissions to their archaeologists to investigate them, and they confirmed me that when I was there. The biggest one are built from sandstone and granite. The smallest one, the most recent one that belongs to certain generals and princesses, they were built from the mud bricks. So obviously our known societies, pharaonic or Chinese emperor societies, they found those pyramids, they were already there for thousands of years before they came. They tried to make replica, but they did not have a knowledge or construction skills. So my conclusion is the knowledge about the pyramids was brought there. Who brought it? When? From where? These are the questions that require answers.
But a question that a lot of people have is, at that time, the knowledge was passed by initiation to the descendants, and that's how they kept the knowledge. Some people say, oh, Mel, those people probably merged into the new population and they kept the knowledge to themselves. Do you buy that?
Hard to say. As a scientist, I have to stay open for different options until we get a definitive proof for one of them. But at this point, I would say it is a possibility that Homo sapiens sapiens did build those structures. But at a certain point in time, they were having more advanced mental and spiritual abilities in order to build those pyramids. Of course, another possibility that the knowledge came out of this planet, or the third possibility that it came from within the planet. Now, that's in the case that the knowledge came from this dimension. And then we can add, there is a possibility that it did come from some other dimensions. So I think that the world is much richer than what the mainstream science tries to tell us.
And this is just speculation. You probably know the work of Robert Bauval about the Orion connection between the Giza Plateau. Do you think that they may have been giving us a signal saying we are from there, we're just positioning the pyramids so that we have a point of reference?
I think that it would not make much sense to make huge structures and lay them out certain ways just to show where the builders were coming from. It is possible that the layout is a hint. Now, when it comes to those 3 Giza pyramids out of 10, that are of course the small pyramids there is a certain way that we can say, yeah, there is a possibility that the 3 stars in Orion belt match those 3 pyramids. However, no matter how deep you go in the past, when you try to really match the locations of those 3 stars with the Giza pyramids, the first 2, yes, they can perfectly match, but the third one is always a little bit off. Another independent explorer, his name is Andrew Collins from UK, he gave another option. He thinks that the 3 stars of Cygnus star system is, they are much better match than the stars of Orion. And what I could see, I would agree with him. However, I don't think that that was the primary goal, to build huge structures just to prove where somebody is coming from. I think there was a very practical purpose of those pyramids. But since they are so huge, I would say that they are very complex structures. And a hint to understanding Egyptian pyramids came 35 years ago, when Egyptian Antiquities invited Japanese geophysicists to help them discover what they thought a hidden passageways and a hidden chamber with possible mummy of the pharaoh Khafre in the second largest Egyptian pyramid. Of course, they never discovered the mummy or hidden passageway, but what they did discover was the fact that every 10 minutes the energy field of the pyramid changes. They were so shocked. They said, well, this is not only the construction, but this is an energy machine. Egyptians threw them out of the country with the words, we did not call you to look for the energy properties, but to find us a mummy. After that, for more than 3 decades, Egyptologists do not allow any energy expert, the physicists, electrical engineers, to do the research over there. They are open only for the universities, mostly from Europe and the US, who will give them their goals of the project and who will be looking for the proof that the pyramids were built by the pharaonic society.
Just like we have power plants around the nation, we see all these pyramids, there's a grid. Do you think, as many have speculated, that they could have been power plants somehow?
In our Bosnian Pyramid project, which has been active for 8 years now, the first 5 years we spent proving that we have construction complex, The shape of the pyramid, perfect orientation, artificial concrete, inner passageways, underground tunnels, water, sacred geometry. Now, we do not intend to spend another 100 years trying to convince everyone that we had pyramids in Bosnia. We had to move on. In our case, it meant we have to find out the purpose of pyramids. Archaeologists, geologists, Egyptologists could not help us. Nobody teaches them about the true nature of the pyramid. So we seek for the help from the physicists, electrical engineers. The first one to come was physicist, PhD from Zagreb, Croatia, Slobodan Mizrak. He came with his 10-member team with equipment to look for electromagnetic anomalies. They are checking nearby hills in Visoko, no anomalies. We were going around the Sun Pyramid, no anomalies. But when we came to the very top of the pyramid, in a radius of 13 feet, they detected and measured electromagnetic field of 28 kilohertz frequency. They got out of this radius, no detection. They came back in, detection was there. It meant that this electromagnetic field does not go left or right, but it goes up. 3 months later, Serbian electrical engineer Goran Marjanovic came with his equipment and he confirmed this test with frequency of 28.4 kilohertz. Later that summer, the scientist from Finland, the sound engineer Heikki Savolainen, and anthropology professor from Italy, Professor De Bertolis, they confirmed the same readings. So in science, when you have 4 independent teams coming with their equipment at different times and getting the same results, it is called an international verification of the phenomenon. Which phenomenon? The energy beam, electromagnetic in nature, frequency of 28 kilohertz, which is continuous during all seasons, summer and spring and fall and winter, going up through the very center of the pyramid. So, now we have existence of this energy beam. 28 kilohertz frequency, which comes at the regular distances in blocks, is not something that can be found in Mother Nature. But on the other side, it is not something that we use in our technology. For example, we use, when it comes to electricity, 110 volts and 60 hertz. We use, when it comes to our cell phones, megahertz. We use, when it comes to the energy transportation, gigahertz, but not 28 kilohertz. So somebody needed this particular frequency. The second thing we did, we measured the strength of the signal. On the top of the pyramid, 10 feet higher, and another 10 feet higher. Every time we move our antenna up, the signal was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Now the physicists could not believe. They said, well, it is in contradiction with our technology, and our technology says the closer to the source of the energy, the signal is stronger. You move away, the signal is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And we can name our technology Hertzian technology. Well, what we had in Bosnia was non-Hertzian technology. It did not surprise me because everything is upside down in Bosnia. So you move away from the pyramid, the signal was getting stronger and stronger. In 21st century, we do not have technology based on non-Hertzian signals. However, the guy who was born less than 200 miles from Bosnian pyramids was experimenting in his lab in Colorado Springs in 1899 and
Nikola Tesla.
He was experimenting with non-Hertzian technology, and his name was Nikola Tesla. He invented a transformer, which is today known as Tesla's coil, and he was able to send wirelessly the energy beams from one end of his lab to another one, 55 feet away. And he was able to light up the light bulbs, even if they were burned. And just before they are going to burn down his lab, he made the last experiment. He sent an energy beam from his lab to the ionosphere around our planet. This energy beam reflected. It was coming back to the Earth much, much stronger, non-Hertzian phenomenon. And then he lit up more than 10,000 homes in Colorado Springs. So, for the first time, one scientist from our civilizational cycle has proven that clean energy was possible, that unlimited quantities of energies were possible, that non-Hertzian phenomenon was possible, that wireless transportation of energy was possible, and finally, that free energy was possible. Was his discovery accepted by big American corporations? Of course not. How will J.P. Morgan, who was funding Tesla's work, sell the free energy? How he's going to make money? So, he stopped financing Tesla and started investing money in very expensive hydro, thermal, nowadays nuclear power plants, building those expensive transformer and power lines, losing 20 to 50% of energy. And by the way, if you are nearby, those electromagnetics will burn your brain cells and then sell it to us and the users for a lot of money. And this is what we call a profit economy. However, the day will come when we will all enjoy the benefits of the free energy. And that will be the day with the first pillar of the free society. And the second pillar of the free society will be the free flow of knowledge. Instead only to elites, it should be coming to all of us. And based on those two pillars, we will have a society of free women and free men.
As you were describing the power components of a pyramid, I was just thinking of Tesla, and I was wondering if he was trying to replicate that by doing what he did. And as you say, he pointed to the ionosphere, and it came down again with more power. I was wondering if the pyramids did the same thing, and what happened. Why are they inactive? What is it going to take to reactivate, to make the pyramids active one more time? Can they be activated?
First, we need to understand how they function. In the case of Bosnian pyramids, this is what we have found so far. Now, the pyramid does not generate energy from nothing. It has to be a source of the energy. So, for the electromagnetism, we have consulted 3 labs in Belgrade, Serbia, Zagreb, Croatia, and Vienna, Austria. We asked them for the source of the energy. They all gave us the same answer. 2,440 meters, approximately 1.4 miles, there was an iron plate or iron ore below the pyramid. Why iron? Because iron generates its own electromagnetic field. What the pyramid does, it sucks this energy, amplifying it. How do we know that the pyramid amplifies the energy? 2 of our Russian colleagues, geophysicists from Schmidt Institute in Moscow, Professor Oleg Kavroshkin and Professor Vladislav Tsiplakov, came to Bosnia and in Egypt, and we were measuring the strength of the signal at the bottom and at the top of the pyramid. The signal at the top was 50 times stronger. So, now we know that we have this iron plate or iron ore below the pyramid. But this is only one type of the energy. The second one, there are a lot of underground water streams, when you have two parallel underground water flows, in between the electricity is being generated. The third one is the magnetic energy. In the core of our planet is magma. Magma generates magnetic energy around our planet. The fourth one, when the underground water moves, it releases the negative ions. So these four types of energy we can measure with our scientific instruments. How many more? Hard to say. We simply do not have instruments to measure some other types of energy. For example, the orgone energy, chi, or life energy. We know that it exists, but we still need to develop scientific instruments to precisely measure them. So we are coming to the conclusion that the pyramid is very complex energy machine in the case of Bosnia. So below the surface we have those energy sources. Between those energy sources and the pyramid we have a huge network of prehistorical underground tunnels. Those tunnels, they are huge labyrinth with the chambers, with the underground lakes. So the energy flows we can measure in those underground tunnels. In Visoko we measured the electromagnetism, 28 kilohertz frequency. We measured ultrasound, 28 kilohertz frequency. We measured negative ionization, 10 to 50 times higher than at the other places on the planet. So all this energy flows through the tunnels. The pyramid is sucking them. And then inside the pyramid we have 7 levels of passageways. And they form the spiral. So this energy goes through the spiral and as focused energy beams through the top of the pyramid. This is very interesting energy machine. So you were asking me if we can replicate that. Well, it seems that some other parts are missing. Some of the Akashic record readers were telling me that it had to be a huge quartz crystal somewhere below the pyramid. We are to find that quartz crystal yet, but probably it had very important function when it comes to the energy amplification. So now, if we can understand the whole system, then yes, we can replicate it. But another problem is the pyramid in Bosnia, they are not complete. The very important part, the pyramidion, the top part, is missing because the top in Bosnia is flat. Plus, during the Illyrian times, 2,500 years ago, and Roman times, 2,000 years ago, and medieval times, 800 years ago, they had their settlements. So it's not like before. Then we can see the 3 sides are perfectly preserved, but the 4th one, the south, is heavily damaged. So instead of 1 meter or 3 feet of soil, we have 40 to 50 feet of soil. So this machine is not well preserved like before, and especially without the pyramidion, it cannot, have the energy which is focused to certain places. But in the previous question you asked me about the grid. I believe there was a grid. Imagine Bosnian pyramid working perfectly, producing much stronger energy beam than today. It would go somewhere to ionosphere. Imagine Egyptian pyramids also sending their beams, and Chinese and Mexican and Peruvian and all others. If you have a body in the space around our planet that can collect all this energy, then you would get very powerful energy source. What you can do with that? Well, you can build a protective shield. You can use it for the communication, transportation, for the warfare. Then your imagination is becoming the limit.
There are so many possibilities, if it was a protective shield and perhaps that allowed people to live longer because the gamma rays would not penetrate our atmosphere the way they do now. But we have so much more to discuss. We have to take a one and only break, Dr. Sam. But, one last thing before we take the break. There are argon generators that anyone can purchase today and bring negative ions to their home. When we come back, let's answer the question, were the pyramids global argon generators? And, we have 365 days in a year. 25,920 years in a galactic year, cycles of enlightenment and cycles of darkness come along. Could it be that pyramids were built during a cycle of enlightenment? Then we went to a cycle of darkness, and are we on the upswing again? We'll get the answer when we come back. But tell the audience, how can people buy your books, learn more about your research?
On my official website and the foundation website, there are information how to order some of my books. For example, Foundation's official website is BosnianPyramidOfTheSun.com. BosnianPyramidOfTheSun.com, and they can be purchased there. Or mine is SamOsmanagich.com. Sam, S-A-M, Osmanagich, OSMANAGICH.com. So they can get the books, and they can get more information how to visit the Bosnian pyramid sites and how to become a part of the most exciting project as a visitor, volunteer, researcher, media, tourist.
And imagine how many billions of dollars that could bring to the local economy if it is accepted by the government that it is a pyramid. Imagine the positive ramifications that would have, and the questions that could be answered for the rest of us. But all of this when we come back. I'm here with Dr. Semir Osmanagich. This is Mel Fabregas, and you're listening to Veritas. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for listening to the first segment of this very important interview. To listen to the rest, go to veritasradio.com and subscribe. You will receive your login immediately. We'll take a short intermission, listen to some music, and we'll be right back. Enjoy.